The free agency window opened in the NBA, and yours truly, the Memphis Grizzlies, were the busiest team in the NBA. They re-signed some guys. They used their mid-level exception, which we've been calling for a couple of years, using the full MLE on a player. They did all of these things. We got to break down every single move that the Grizzlies made on the first day of free agency, coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thanking you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies on today. Make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Grizzlies with us each and every day, because we thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. But remember also that today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So make sure you go take advantage of that over at FanDuel right now. Free agency is here. The moratorium period has opened in the NBA, which is basically that little window in between when the previous season ends and the new season begins, and free agency kind of starts. You get to agree to deals. You can't sign it. Nothing becomes official till July 6th. But we got progress, and we know what the Memphis Grizzlies are going to do and what they plan to do, because they wasted no time. The Grizzlies instantly, in the first hour of free agency, they were the most active team in the league. We saw in just a 70-minute window, we saw Jaren Jackson Jr. get re-signed. We saw a decision, potentially a route on Cole Anthony and his future. We saw Ty Jerome become a Memphis Grizzly. We saw Cam Sensor get promoted, and we saw Santi Aldama come back via an extension. We got to break down all of those things in the first segment. In the second segment, we'll talk a little bit more about Ty Jerome. I know some of y'all want to hear what I got to say about this contract, and I'm going to expand a little bit more, because I ain't no hater. I think a lot of people thought I was hating yesterday. So let me clarify a couple things on today's show. And then in the last segment, we got to talk about some more moves potentially and kind of what's next. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. But we got to start now with Jaren Jackson Jr. Congratulations to Jaren Jackson Jr. He is now the highest paid player in Memphis Grizzlies franchise history. The Grizzlies not inking yet, but the Grizzlies have agreed to a 5-year, $240 million contract extension with Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that's a terrific deal for both sides. I think that's terrific value for the Grizzlies, and I think that's terrific value for Jaren Jackson Jr., given the circumstances of everything that played out. I'll start here. From the standpoint of, 5 years, 240. Again, it's the richest contract in Grizzlies franchise history. Quite frankly, Jaren Jackson Jr., he's coming off of another all-star season. You can talk about how his season ended or whatever the case may be, but bottom line, he was an all-star for the second time. He made an all-defensive team. And dudes who have those type of accolades, dudes who are all-stars and all-defensive players in the same season, that's pretty much the personification of a really good two-way player. But they get paid. They get paid a lot of money in this league, because that is usually a winning recipe. Jaren Jackson Jr. was rewarded. I know, there was some offensive inefficiency at time or whatever the case may be, but Jaren is a star in Memphis. He loves being in Memphis. If you follow him on social media, on X, after word of the contract agreement came out, Jaren never said, hey, I got a new contract, but he said a lot of things just kind of alluding to the fact that he's happy in Memphis. He loves being here. He's been here 7 years now. Shout out to Jaren Jackson Jr., becoming the highest paid Memphis Grizzlies player of all time. The value, I think, is great. There's a lot of reference points to look at here. Number one is, remember, if Jaren Jackson Jr. would have qualified for that Supermax, he would have been eligible for a contract 5 years worth close to $345 million, essentially $100 million more than what he signed for. So if he makes All-NBA, if he would have made All-NBA, I don't think that he gets $345 million. I never said that. He would have been eligible for it. I think what would have happened is they would have settled somewhere in the middle, and Jaren may have gotten 300 million, so to speak. 5 years, 300 million. I could have seen something like that potentially, somewhere in that range, whatever the case would be. But the point is, the Grizzlies, in this case scenario, it was the best of both worlds, worked out a nice deal where they renegotiated his contract. So his contract actually starts this upcoming season, right? It's a 5 year deal, and it's going to be up in 5 years because it starts this upcoming season. Congratulations to Jaren Jackson Jr. But in order to make that money work, in order for the Grizzlies to create that space, we talked about it a ton of times. The Grizzlies are going to have to let someone go, or they're going to have to trade someone, which seemed like the most plausible option. But in this case, Cole Anthony, which has been one of the names we talked about the most, that if someone is going to be let go, he's a very likely candidate. Cole Anthony, according to reports, is more than likely going to be bought out. I mean, his own dad on NBA TV, Greg Anthony, was one of the first to put out the idea that Cole Anthony might be bought out by the Memphis Grizzlies. So that's not done yet as of this recording, but the Grizzlies are potentially, moving in that route. Maybe they get a trade partner before they officially agree to a buyout, or whatever the case may be. We'll continue to monitor what happens there. But at the end of the day, the Cole Anthony contract will move off of the books, clearing the way for Jaren Jackson Jr. to get his money. Ty Jerome was the next deal that took place. I won't spend too much time talking about this in the first segment because we're going to dig into it in the second segment. But one thing I do want to point out is that Ty Jerome at the mid-level exception, I think, is solid value. Out of everything that I said on yesterday about him as a player, the fit and everything, I do think when you say the Grizzlies, who operated as a team who was under the cap, got the under the cap mid-level exception. So they didn't have the taxpayer MLE. And just remember, the taxpayer MLE for teams who were over the salary cap and who were under the first apron, those teams had a $14.1 million MLE to use. The Grizzlies, a little bit less than that, a lot less than that, actually, $8.8 million per year. They basically used the full MLE to go get Ty Jerome. That's something we haven't seen the Grizzlies do in years. Like, they've sprinkled the MLE out in terms of getting some of these guys these contracts off of these two-way deals, right? But in this case, the Grizzlies went out and used the full MLE on a player. I think it's the first time they've done that since Kyle Anderson. Me and Joe Mullinax have been talking about it. The Grizzlies being more aggressive, using that MLE, going out there to get a really quality NBA player. In this case, they made a move. They identified someone, and they got him quickly on the first day of free agency. So that's that. And then Cam Spencer. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Cam Spencer's situation. The Grizzlies extended the qualifying offer, making him a restricted free agent, and wasted little time. 2-year deal for Cam Spencer, basically promoting him to the 15-man roster. So now he's on a standard contract, becomes the latest player to be drafted in the second round by the Grizzlies and get that promotion. We've seen that a lot lately. We saw it with G.G. Jackson. We saw it with Vince Williams. We've seen that kind of be a hallmark, as of late. Guys getting drafted in the second round by the Grizzlies, showing that they belong and kind of getting promoted. It's not even just been guys who get drafted in the second round. Scottie Pippen Jr. is another example, of that as well. But shout out to Cam Spencer. Really looking forward to seeing him over in Summer League and so forth, about how he continues to progress now, especially that he has this standard contract. Last but definitely not least, Santi Aldama gets paid. This one, to me, was the most surprising one that happened fast. A lot of these other things, Jaren Jackson Jr. was priority number one. Knew they wanted to get that done. In order for that to get done, something had to happen with Cole Anthony. Knew those things were going to happen. Ty Jerome, the steam had been picking up over the last couple of days. We talked about it in yesterday's show. So that one it's not a surprise that got done fast too. Cam Spencer, the Grizzlies could have got that done whenever they wanted pretty much. But at the same time, I know how much the Grizzlies like Cam Spencer. No surprise that they got that done so fast. Santi Aldama was a little bit of a different situation because part of me thought Santi himself might not drag it out long, but with the rumored interest and the reported interest out there that other teams had in Santi, it made sense to say, okay, let's play this out a little bit and let's see how far this goes. But then again, I've talked to Santi. I talked to Santi at the very end of the season, about Memphis. After the last playoff game in OKC, we were in the locker room, we were talking, and he talked about how much he loves Memphis, how much he wants to be here and things like that. And the Grizzlies wanted him as well. So at the end of the day, my number for Santi was always somewhere around 16 million. I felt like, if you can get Santi at around 4 years, 64 million, that seems like a really good offer. In this case, the Grizzlies got 3 years, a 3 year Santi contract, and he got a roughly around a little bit over 17 million a year. I think that's terrific value for the Grizzlies. I think that's terrific value for Santi. And look, you could say what you want about Santi on the defensive end and him maybe not, being the toughest guy or whatever the case may be. But I'm of the opinion that the Grizzlies have needed that scoring pop. I'll talk about that a little bit more too. I'm not going to contradict myself here. I know what I'm saying. They've needed this scoring pop that Santi brings. It really comes into play when Jaren Jackson Jr. is in foul trouble, or Zach Edey's in foul trouble. They need his 3-point shooting, right? You lose Desmond Bain, you lose Luke Kennard. You need other guys who could come in and efficiently and confidently shoot the 3-point shot. Opposing teams know when Santi Aldama is in the game, he's going to get some shots up. So again, maybe Santi isn't going to be that 20-point per guy, 20-point per game guy or anything like that one day. But at the end of the day, he's a solid rotation big. Other teams saw the value there. The Grizzlies clearly saw the value. It's a 3-year deal. I think, look, that is no harm, no foul. Congratulations to Santi Aldama. Congratulations to the rest of these guys getting their chicken, getting their money, and solidifying their futures with the Memphis Grizzlies. And another guy that we got to talk about, we touched on him a little bit in the first segment, but I want to dig a little bit deeper in the second segment. We're going to be talking about him a lot over the next few days, and that's Ty Jerome. We got to talk about the Ty Jerome deal that the Grizzlies gave him. Let's talk about that deal coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that and break down that deal, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or you like high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? And with FanDuel, you can get on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. So me personally, I like to use the same game parlays. So whether you're using the same game parlay or you're watching a bet ride out into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're a part of the action. Remember, it's easy to use, it's fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. You got to go take advantage of that. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Go check that out now over at FanDuel. The Memphis Grizzlies picked up a major free agency signing, one of the six-man of the year candidates, a six-man of the year finalist last season, Mr. Ty Jerome. And we talked about him a lot in yesterday's show. I talked about him a lot. And I know as the day kind of went on, I saw y'all's messages. I saw it. I was trying to work the phones and I was a little busy or whatever case may be, but I saw the messages. People were messaging me on social media and stuff like, look, sending me memes like, oh, look, this is going to be Damichael's face if Ty Jerome signs with the Grizzlies and all that. And no, I got nothing against the guy signing with the Grizzlies. Let's get that out the way. I just simply, if I remember my words correctly, I said that this was more about being a bad fit than it being a bad player. Ty Jerome ain't a bad player. Never said that. This is not a great fit for the Grizzlies. Now, that's my opinion, but let's get into it a little bit because there is good here. There's a lot of good. And the main good to me is what I touched on a little bit in the first segment is you got Ty Jerome at the mid-level exception, not the full mid-level exception that most of the league has access to. I want to keep going back to that point. The Grizzlies are one of only two teams in the NBA who have access to this $8.8 million mid-level exception. There's somewhere around 15 to 20 other teams who have the full 14.1 mid-level exception, which puts them in a whole nother tier and a whole nother access to free agents than the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies, with all that being said, still were able to pull off this deal. I thought initially, like, if they go get Ty Jerome, they're going to have to move a little bit of pieces, right? But as I talked to people yesterday, learned some surprising things in terms of, Ty Jerome's market, so to speak, wasn't as robust for the $14.1 million. Like there wasn't, it was a little bit quieter on that end. I think, the playoffs, we talked about it a little bit. He did not have a great playoff performance. If you go back to the playoffs, um, just quickly speaking about it, Darius Garland was injured. Donovan Mitchell, was battling an injury in that series against the Pacers, and that put Ty Jerome, who was the sixth man backup guard, in a more responsible position, in a bigger spot. And he had a game where he shot 1 of 14. He had a game where he shot 1 of 8. And basically by the end of the series, just wasn't playing much. So that kind of tanked his value a little bit, so to speak. But when you look at the full body of work, there is a lot of good to see in what he brings to the Grizzlies. Some things that I've even emphasized myself. The number one thing is the fact that he is a really good three-point shooter. That did not start this past season, his breakout year with the Cavs. He entered the NBA known as someone who could really shoot the basketball coming out of Virginia. He's been that since he's been in the league, and he just got a bigger opportunity with the Cavs. Grizzlies fans saw it up close, right? There's some creativity to his game. He has one of the best floaters in the league, so he can get to the mid-range area. If you look at his efficiencies from all across the floor, he's pretty efficient in every area, pretty much except at the rim, in which he's not going to be there a lot. That's why he uses that floater a lot. The three-point shot, I think, is a terrific addition. When you factor in Luke Kennard is gone, reportedly to the Atlanta Hawks. Factor in Desmond Bane is gone. You needed someone who had experience and who could knock down three-point shots. That's Ty Jerome. I like that fact. I like the fact that he has shot creating ability. He's a combo guard. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He can play alongside of the Ja Morants and Scottie Pippen Jr.'s in whatever way possible, whether that you want him to be the primary creator or you want him to be the guy who takes the spot up shots or is the secondary creator and those type of things. So there is some versatility to the role that he's going to bring in. So I like all of that. Now, look, at the end of the day, I'm from Memphis too. I'm from Memphis like a lot of people listening, and I'm going to stand on business of what I said now. Like I meant what I said. And the main concern for me as it pertains to this edition is I don't see the end of game value. And what I mean by that is the Grizzlies, you add a guy like Ty Jerome, he has what looks like closing potential on the offensive end, right? He has the ability to be a guy who can go get his own shot, and that's what the Grizzlies need. But guess what? He probably isn't going to get a lot of situations in the game, in those situations, to show what he can do for the most part, because of the fact that we saw last season, we saw the last couple of years, the Grizzlies are trying to go away from the fact that, look, a lot of times they close games with Jalen Wells pretty much being the one guy who was the primary defender on the defensive end who could get after it. Desmond Bane is going to play really hard on defense, man. He's going to hold his own a lot of times, but he is not, above league average defender, so to speak. So you got Ja Morant in the game already, and you're going to have Ty Jerome closing at the same time. So that's just not going to happen much. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be certain matchups, like everything is matchup dependent, right? But a lot of these teams in the West, they have multiple perimeter guys that can score 20 plus. And when that's the case, you're not going to see Ty Jerome and Ja Morant both in the game in those lineup closing out games. So I think, I talked to my co-host a little bit, Joe Monex, who's off today. He'll be back with us on tomorrow. And Joe loves this move, and he'll talk a little bit more about that on tomorrow. But my thing is there's limited upside in terms of what he can add. Now, like I said in the first segment about Santi Aldama, again, I said I'm not going to contradict myself. I know what I said. Santi Aldama isn't a great defender either. But also, Santi gives you that scoring pack off the bench. I think Ty Jerome, there is part of his game where now, Scottie Pippen Jr., as much as I like what Scottie Pippen Jr. brings, it's mostly because of the defensive tenacity that he plays with. Now you combo those guys. I think that could work very well, where you have Ty Jerome and Scottie Pippen Jr. playing together. Two guys who are mostly combo guards. You got that explosive microwave scorer coming off the bench on the opposing team. Scottie, you go guard him. Ty Jerome, go get us some buckets. Go get us some points while Ja's out of the game and go create for your teammates. I think that could work very well. As for the playoffs and all those things, that's a whole nother conversation, because I don't see at this point in time, him being a guy who's going to play a lot of minutes in a playoff situation, giving, what the Grizzlies are kind of trending towards. More two-way guys, more guys who have that defensive versatility. And look, I know yesterday I said something. I used the words like pigeon and things like that. But at the end of the day, with Ty Jerome, if you want to talk about one area that he is very good defensively, he plays very well. From the standpoint of he has very active hands. He's got very active hands on the defensive end. He can get out. He can pickpocket you. He can get some steals. But defensively, there's limited upside there. I did, just for clarify, I reached out to some people who watched him very close, in Cleveland, and I tried to, I asked him questions. I said, look, is this defense better than what I've been saying, or am I overthinking it, or whatever the case may be? This is one of my people out who covers the Cleveland Cavaliers said. He said, when you dig into the numbers for the Pacers series, he was historically bad defensively. He is handsy, which is what I was just talking about, has really good hands on defensive end, but he can't move his hips. And if a player gets by him, it's over with. But he can take some cookies every now and then. So that's pretty much what it is. So he's going to be a guy who's going to take some risks. He's going to reach a little bit, and he's going to get you some steals. He's going to make some plays, and that's okay. That plays well in the regular season. He's going to make some plays in the playoffs. It's a little bit tougher. But at the end of the day, if you say, hey, you could get Ty Jerome, a guy who's a Sixth-Man of the Year finalist for the mid-level exception at $8.8 million a year. Again, we just talked about Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard got $11 million contract, 1 year, $11 million. Now, that's a 1 year contract, but he had $11 million. Ty Jerome just went for 8.8. That is terrific value from the Grizzlies. That is the one thing that's holding me on to this deal. I will give it a passing grade for the fact that Ty Jerome, with this value, it's very understandable why the Grizzlies made the move. And again, there are some positives. I know I've touched a lot on some of the concerns that I have, but that 3-point shooting and some of that creation, those are some of the biggest problems we've talked about over the last couple years with the Grizzlies and some of the things that they lack. Speaking of lacking, do the Grizzlies lack in any other areas? Do they need to make some more moves? We're going to talk about that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. Memphis Grizzlies made a flurry of moves on yesterday, right? We talked about all the moves that they made, and now the question is, are there more moves to be made? And there's a simple answer here, because the answer always lies into what we see. How many roster spots do they have available? What does the money situation look like? Do they have movable contracts? All of these things have to be factored in, because that's pretty much what the NBA is right now. So let's start with what we see. The roster's full. The Grizzlies' standard contract roster is over full, to be honest with you, because Cole Anthony is still here on, before he's bought out, whether he's traded, whatever the case may be. But we know that move's going to happen. And when that move eventually happens, the Grizzlies will go from 16 players on the standard roster to 15. 15 is the league limit. You can't go over 15 players, and you get 15 standard contracts. You get 3 two-way contracts. So boom, you got 15 players on standard deals. Perfect. But if you want to make another move, as some people say, oh, what about another big, right? I've been seeing that's a popular question that a lot of people have. I put it like this. Who are you going to move? Who are you willing to move right now on the Grizzlies roster? And I'll factor it in by saying this. Who you want to move, make sure that player is a desirable player for an opposing team too. Because if it's not, now you're talking about attaching draft assets. And when you get into that conversation, I really don't care too much for attaching draft assets at this point for adding another big, which is more than likely going to be a minimum level player, a player that's barely going to play, because the Grizzlies aren't in the market to do much else. They're under the luxury tax. They're under the first apron. They're in a good financial, flexible situation. They're not about to go out and make some more large moves. What you're seeing right now, for the most part, is probably going to be the bulk of the Grizzlies roster, barring something wild. Now, this is what I believe up to this point. But yes, so now that brings us to the next question, and then that's, can the Grizzlies get by at center? Now, it boils down to how long Zach Edey's out, right? And if they don't make a move, I think that's a vote of confidence from the Grizzlies side that, oh, Zach's not going to miss too much time. And I always have to use this as a reference because guys heal differently. I want to always throw that out there. But again, we've seen players get similar surgeries as Zach Edey. Taj Gibson is the example that I'll point back to because he had his surgery in June after he got hurt. He returned around the beginning of the season and played a long, healthy season. This is not to say Zach Edey will return at the beginning of the season. This is more to point out the fact that he probably shouldn't be expected to miss too much after the beginning of the season. And if that's the way the Grizzlies are looking at it, they're probably saying, we don't got to go out here and waste a spot on a big and get rid of someone on this roster who is probably desirable for us. Because if you look at the roster right now, there aren't many quote unquote empty spots. Like all these guys, you could argue have value for the Grizzlies going forward. And I know some people have kind of stuck a fork in their stock on Vince Williams Jr. or Gigi Jackson or whatever the case may be, but those dudes are still. I mean, Gigi's still 20 years old. It's way too early to give up on Gigi Jackson. Wild to me. Vince Williams Jr. is coming off 2 major injuries in one season. Like maybe he is what he is at this point. But I think it's completely reasonable to say, okay, let's see what this offseason means for the rest of his career. So with all that being said, I don't think the Grizzlies have to go make a move at center. I do know for a fact that there has been interest on the Grizzlies side in terms of getting a look at some other centers. They've worked out some guys and whatnot, but none of it has led to a substantial move, so to speak. I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe, oh, the Grizzlies are going to take a guy off the roster right now and pick up another big. Could it happen? Yes, definitely could happen. But for it to happen, they would have to remove someone right now who's on the 15-man roster. So, I mean, let me know what you guys think. If you think the Grizzlies should go get another big, say, hey, I'm going to remove this guy off the roster and I'm going to go get another big. Tell me who you guys would like to remove in that case scenario. But on a much smaller scale, Cam Spencer being promoted is something that one is kind of led to a lot of what we just talked about. The roster is full now because that was one of the moves that I didn't really expect to happen right now. Not so super surprised because I know how much this team likes him. I said it on social media the other day when we were talking about the 2-way contracts. We were having some, conversations over at X, and I told the people, I was like, if you're worried about Cam Spencer leaving, you need to find something else to worry about because the Grizzlies aren't going to lose Cam Spencer. There's still a lot to like about him. The Grizzlies love what he brings to the table, and this whole idea that this new group of Grizzlies are these dogs and things like that, he embodies that. Cam Spencer embodies that. So the fact that he got promoted from his 2-way contract filled up the standard roster, but it opened up a spot, and that was a big question. That was a huge question because of the fact that the Grizzlies had 3 2-way spots. You had Zion pulling on one spot. They drafted 2 guys in the second round. We figured that Javon Small would get one of the spots. Then there was Jemai Meshack. It was, can he get the other spot if Cam Spencer's on a 2-way? How would that work? Would Zion pulling be the odd man out? You don't got to worry about that anymore right now as of this moment because right now, as it looks, you got Zion pulling, you got Jemai Meshack, and you got Javon Small. It's pretty much now. We'll see how everything falls in place, but it's pretty much laid out for those 3 guys to be the guys who start the season on 2-ways. Maybe the Grizzlies go get another big via 2-way spot. We'll see. That's what Summer League and all that's going to be for. They'll have some chances to audition some guys or whatever the case may be. We've seen over the last couple of years, guys start Summer League on a 2-way contract with the Grizzlies, and then they end up making some moves or whatever the case may be. So that could be a possibility as well. But overall, Cam Spencer being promoted, that gave us some clarity, a lot of clarity, in fact, on the direction of the Grizzlies going forward. Thank you guys for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate you guys for tuning in with me on today and on yesterday. It's just been my voice the last couple of days. I'm tired of just hearing me talk so much, and I know you guys probably are too. But we'll be back with Joe Mullinax on tomorrow. As he likes to say, the dynamic duo will be riding again. So we'll be back to break down all things free agency, more moves potentially, and what else is going on around the league. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And Summer League is around the corner. But until next time, remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.